30-second follow-up would then be appropriate, and that would be the length, but that is at your discretion. The questions are going to be addressed to each of the candidates on a rotating basis, and at the end of the debate, the loser of the coin toss, and that would have been Mr. Tucker, will have the opportunity to address the closing remarks first, followed by Mr. Hattenberg. So if that's all clear, let's begin. And our first question has to do with the purposes and performance of municipal government in Spokane Valley. And we'll ask you, Mr. Tucker, what are the essential duties of city government in general, but obviously pertaining to Spokane Valley as well, and is the city performing them well?
Yes. So the duties of the responsibilities of a councilman in Spokane Valley are they help work with infrastructure, making sure that development happens, the roads are being maintained, the snow plowing is being done appropriately, the bridging is being worked with, and the intersections are safe. The next thing is public safety, having to do with the police force and things of that nature. And then the other things having to do with the budget, monitoring the budget, allocating funds in the different departments. So there's an area that's an engineers area with the valley. There's a lot of different other municipal things that they work and look after. And so do I believe that they're doing a good job? Yes. I think that the way that the city is being run well. We have a surplus in the budget right now, and we've had it for several years. I also believe that the way that the credit rating is going, the Valley, they pay for everything by cash, so there's not interest that the taxpayers are paying on top of the other taxes that they have. So I do believe that the city is being run well. Now, are there ways to improve? Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to run. I wanted to maintain a nice conservative approach fiscally, and I feel like that's really important in local government because that's the way to keep things going.
All right, Mr. Hattenberg, do you want to respond to that? And then I'll let you do your opening comment.
Yes,
all right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Maybe something like
yes, and there are some things that the city's doing very well. You know, there's a lot of negativity in news about governments, whether it be local or national or level or state level, but we have some very positive things. I've lived in the Valley my whole life, and I love the Spokane Valley. The budget, I said in the budget meetings for the 2020 budget and things there, we do have a surplus. We need to continue to keep that. I am concerned that there's some individuals on the council talking about a possible increase in tax for repairing roads at some point. I don't believe we have to have that at this time. We have a surplus in the 2020 budget plus capital reserves of over $20 million. And I think there's ways we can work with that. When I was on the library board, we had a capital projects fund that we rolled over any surpluses we had, and we had 10 years of surpluses consecutively running, and we'd roll any extra funds into that capital budget for projects for building infrastructure, as we could do with the roads in the Spokane Valley. The other main concern is we are growing, and we're growing rapidly, and thousands of people I've been to doors and talked to are concerned about the growth in their neighborhoods, about multi-use, family use homes and apartments and the like. So that's something we have to address immediately and on a daily basis. We're growing that rapidly.
And we will address that issue in this forum as well. Now let's get to some an opportunity to get to know the two candidates. Mr. Hattenberg, you won the toss, so you go ahead.
No, thank you. I'm Tim Hattenberg. I grew up in Spokane Valley, lived there my entire life, went to the Central Valley School District in the public schools. Upon graduation, went to Washington State University, received my BA in education from Washington State, and was fortunate enough to be hired to the Central Valley School District, where I spent over 20-some years of my career there, and teaching also as an athletic director, so I was working with multi-million-dollar budgets in that position, and leadership, and working with individuals and people in the community. After that, I was on the Spokane County Library Board of Trustees. 7 of those 10 years, the 10 years I was on, I was chair for 4 years, vice chair for 3. Again, working with multi-million-dollar budgets in Spokane County, which is a population of about 500,000 people. And we had 10 branches in different towns and cities of all sizes. So it was quite a different demographic. I enjoyed working with people in those areas and working on issues and solving any problems that might arise.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
Introduce yourself to our audience.
You bet. So I'm Bo Tucker, been in Spokane Valley, lived here with my wife and raised my family here. We moved to Spokane 1997. I'm a chiropractor by profession, and I've been working with the people of Spokane Valley for the last 23 years. I really enjoy what I do. I listen to people every day what their health problems and health concerns are, and my job is to help them not just find what their symptoms and try to solve it, that part of it, but also to find the origin of their concern and then solve that. And that's something I've done for 20 years. I think that'd be a great asset as a city councilman. I'm also a small business owner, and I've done that for 20 years over that much. And I've run 2 corporations right now, and I'm fiscally conservative, and I've always been that way because I know that your government should be run like a business. And I have that feel because that's my life. I've lived, I've dealt with regulations of sorts throughout my life as far as a business owner goes. And I think that is a good flavor that would be very helpful for the city government.
The city of Spokane Valley is one of the largest cities in the state of Washington. It's in the top 10, and it is growing rapidly. And that means that the things, as you both mentioned, have been done well up until now, but challenges are on the horizon, no question about that. And I'm sure that's why each of you has decided to attempt to serve the public. So let me ask you, economic development, what is the best course? We'll start with you, Mr. Hattenberg. What is the best course for the city of Spokane Valley to follow to attract and to maintain businesses in the community and jobs despite obvious fluctuations that can be expected in the economy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We're having a tremendous growth right now in the city, and we have a working population that we attract industries because of the out of the Trent Barker Road area. It's our industrial area. There's a firm called Katera that was just was in place now. They make laminated wood products. They actually use that laminated wood products to be built in skyscrapers. And it's very popular on the East Coast and the rest of the world. We also have another industry that is going to be located in the next few months. So we're bringing industry to the area. As far as small business, I'm also a small business owner, and I found that doing the paperwork with the city was pretty much seamless and very cooperative. We need to continue to do that and support small businesses as much as we can, as well as large industries. So they are moving to the area, and that's another reason we need to maintain that relationship with those industries and the respect they have for us to locate in the area and provide jobs for the people that are moving, and especially the younger generations that are staying in the area and living there.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes. I feel that economic growth and development is critical to the success of a city because that is where your tax base comes from, the property taxes and also some of the business taxes, sale tax and things of that nature. It's what feeds the city part of its income. And so we want to broaden that out to help broaden the tax burden on the constituents, also the residents that live in the city. So I'm a firm believer that business is a good thing. I think that we do need to be cautious of what we bring into the area because we have a beautiful area in which we live. We want to maintain that, I believe. I think that business in Spokane area is strong. I think that, as Mr. Hattenberg mentioned, the seamlessness in which business applications and permits has improved significantly since when I first moved to the Valley. As I was starting to set up my practice, it was much different then. So I'm glad to see some involvement with the local government in that area. I think that we need to continue that effort.
Well, of course, with the growth that is anticipated, it brings some problems. The growth has a way of creating its own weather, so to speak. And let's talk a little bit about construction and maintenance of streets, shall we? And this question is posed to you. You're both about growth and pro-growth. You like the idea. Growth, of course, means new streets are going to be required, new roadways are going to be required, new neighborhoods are going to be established, and all that sort of thing. How do you propose to stay up with the challenge to keep that funding? Thus far, there's been a surplus, there's money available. That's not always going to be the case.
Yes, so in case of recession, that would not be the case, obviously. And right now, the surplus that we have is actually being used for part of that maintenance. The City Council right now is working actually on a way to make it a permanent part of the budget so that you don't have to pull from the surplus every year. As far as infrastructure, I really believe that in order for people to be happy, sidewalks just aren't sidewalks. People need to have a way to get around safely. It's a part of public safety. I think that the infrastructure is critical. That people, as they build out, developers as they build, or in businesses that they set things up, need to keep that in mind as they're serving a community and bringing those services to the community. I'm not one for regulation. I think that we need to be cautious in overstepping government bounds as far as regulation goes. But I do believe that there is a responsibility to builders and developers to make sure that there's a quality of life for people inside the city limits.
Mr. Hattenberg, your response to that question.
Well, I agree with most of what Bo said. The developers, and there's some very responsible ones. As I said earlier, there's a lot of positive things out there. It's not all negative. We had a developer just around the corner from where we've lived for 41 years in a small residential area that put in three duplexes. There's some people saying, well, we don't want duplexes in our neighborhood. But just to be specific, in that area, the place that they removed was an old house, and it was quite frequently a drug house. And it was a problem in the neighborhood. So there's positive. This developer came in and added sidewalks. He didn't have to. He went above and beyond. The landscaping is excellent. And there's responsible people out there, and they need to be held to that accountability. People do want, especially with the growth of multifamily housing, we need more green spaces. We're lacking in park spaces. And that's something we need to look at in the future. And I don't think there's any disagreement with anybody on the meetings I've been to that we have to look at that when we grow. We need to provide the services and also green spaces for people to have, spend their leisure time.
All right, then let me ask you both on this same question, unless you want to follow up to what he had to say first.
We're good there, yeah.
Okay. How do we pay for this, though? I mean, at some point, the surplus isn't going to be sufficient. And when it isn't sufficient, then we have to look at raising taxes in some way or creating a special tax or bond issues or whatever the happens to be. How is that going to be done? What is your vision with respect to how that's
so
done, Mr. Tucker?
I think probably the first thing we need to do is talk with our residents, find out what kind of roads they want. When you drive in the valley, it's different from when you drive in Spokane at this point.
Yes.
The roads are definitely maintained at a different level, and we've maintained that as a city because it's a high priority for us. If the residents want to continue that, we are going to have to make some kind of a permanent change to the budget so that that can be maintained and carried through in lean and in prosperous times. So there's been some discussion of taxes. I am not a proponent of taxes. I think lean government is the best way to go. So I think the best way to work with that is to work with businesses and see what can be done as far as improving and broaden the tax base that we have through economic growth and development in order to pay for some of those services that need to be rendered.
Okay, Mr. Hattenberg.
I'm not a fan of taxes. When I was on the library board for 10 years, we didn't have a tax increase of any kind. We had a surplus for 10 years. When I worked with the school district, I was proud to be in charge of an athletic budget that I was always had a surplus of provided services. So I think that's the mentality we need to take. Having said that, one of the issues we have with the road repair fund is it was originally based on a landline tax for utility tax. And obviously, as we all know, especially with the younger people and people even our generation, fewer and fewer people have landlines. I'd like to look at the idea and look at a feasibility study. Can we change that tax to cell phones? I don't know how that would work, but I would ask the question and explore that. And that would bring us more revenue, simply the fact that people of all ages have the cell phones. You could spread that out and among a lot of people and not have that much of a tax and still collectively pay for that fund, because the landline, of course, they're just going to be fewer and fewer. So that's a problem there. And my last resort would be raising taxes. And I think if we have a situation where we had to look at an economic situation for roads, if nothing else, we'd go to the people for their approval of a bond or something like that. But I would not be in favor as a council person in approving of a tax increase.
Any follow-up to that?
I don't. I know.
All right, then let's move on.
Okay.
Every city in America struggles with the issue of homelessness. Every city. Spokane Valley is not an exception, although it hasn't been nearly as severe in Spokane Valley as obviously it is elsewhere. However, an influx of homelessness can be expected because that's what's happening all over our country. What policies, this to you, Mr. Hattenberg, what policies do you support regarding providing for homelessness in your city? What will you do?
Well, right now we're cooperating with the city of Spokane and Spokane County in partnership. We would continue that. Because just working together and putting our funds together. There was a refund from the state. I believe it was 0.076 to be used for affordable housing. It could be used for part of homelessness throughout the state of Washington. It's earmarked for that only. So that's a start. I'd also look at a feasibility study of the money we're spending now and working with the city of Spokane and Spokane County. Would that be better spent having our own shelter if it's fiscally responsible to do so, or if not, continue to partner? We also have to realize that most of homelessness is mental, people with mental problems, not drug. Well, most people want to put just a face on it that everyone's a drug addict that is homeless, and that's not correct. That problem is there. We have Valley Hospital, and I spoke to their staff just recently, and they said what they see on a daily basis is people, if they're picked up in a situation and the police have to bring them in, and usually it's a mental condition. They said, we need to look at that. We need to sit down with organizations like Valley Hospital. What can we do to help them? What can they advise, could they provide us to work with it? And it's a serious situation. There's no simple solution. There's no boundaries to it in the region. But it's something we have to look at and explore other ways of dealing with that and working with people and our professionals in our community and working with it.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes, as far as homelessness is concerned, it's not an us and them, because we need to have compassion on all of our brothers and sisters. Having said that, I know that dignity is lost when you give a hand out. People, they become less grateful. They become more demanding when they're just given. A lot of the proposals that have gone through Spokane as the city have not been productive for the community or for the area. We are uniquely in a situation in the valley where we don't have the mistakes that have been made downtown. So we want to definitely harness the good that we can do and creating new proposals. Now, Circuit 9 does have our hands tied, but we're working through that. We're actually a part of the Boise appeal that is being put out against Circuit 9, which ties our hands as a community to be able to move people in a situation. So,
Okay. You have a follow-up, if any?
Well,
30
it
seconds.
is true that we can learn from other people's situations, and again, people I've spoken to at the doors, and I agree with both. There needs to be accountability. We can't just say, I don't agree just to hand out either. And if people are willing and able and want to look at job training or go through drug treatment programs and things like that, we can steer them in the right direction. So we'd certainly look at that.
All right, let's go on to a follow-up to that particular issue. Stay with homelessness, if you would, for a moment. Some folks in your community think that homelessness already in Spokane Valley is creating a public safety problem. Do you agree with that? If you don't agree with that, how would you characterize it? Mr. Tucker?
okay. Yeah, I have actually heard the same thing. People who go to the parks that are already here along the trail, that is in existence that the Spokane Valley put in that's close to the Centennial Trail. I've had people, I've been jogging on that in the mornings as well, and it's not the best situation for people. And so I think public safety is an issue with homelessness, and I think that if someone wants to go to a park, they need to be able to feel safe there. And so I do think that we need guidelines, we need barriers that do create a situation where people can feel safe and go and enjoy the parks and lands that we have established, that we've spent money on, taxpayer money, to make it a benefit for people. So I think that we definitely need, as it grows with homelessness, to make sure that we stay in a situation where we don't just allow people to come in and make the community uncomfortable with the safety issues that can bring. And so we need to be tough in some of those areas as to how we are going to regulate homelessness.
Mr. Hattenberg.
Well, I agree with most of what both said. In fact, to further up on that, I was speaking with our Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. There's a lot of time spent and money by our police force. We contract with the County Sheriff's Office for Spokane Valley Police on homeless issues when there's other things like serious crimes, domestic violence, burglaries, break-ins, whatever, and people are saying, well, where are they at? They only could go so far. They're stretched pretty thin as it is. So that's something we would benefit the police department and our community by looking at things and issues and cracking down on the criminal aspect of it, the possible criminal aspects, and people, not even be able to feel to go out and say public safety. It's also, again, it's being hard on the police department when they need to be doing other things. I talked to some people again in the mental health clinic, and they said that a lot of times the sheriffs have to drop somebody off at the hospital, the emergency room, so they spent their whole day or morning doing that when they need to be on call for some other situation like serious accidents or the like. So it is a problem we need to address.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, I think one example of this is that there's a new charity, Catholic charity that got put in. The amount of police work it takes to work with that situation, from what I understand, when it got put in, up to 30% of the calls were coming from that location. And so that really does tie up the police and the protection that they can provide for our city. And so we need to make sure that when we put something in place, that there is a way that we can have accountability for the people who are there.
All right, Mr. Hattenberg brought up the county sheriff and the contract with the city of Spokane Valley. So let me ask you, should the city of Spokane Valley change its contract in any way, shape, or form with the county sheriff's department? If so, what changes would you make, Mr. Hattenberg?
Right now, I wouldn't make any changes. In fact, there's some people on the council that are on the council now, they're not running for office, have brought up the idea of their own police force. And I've gotten that at the door quite a bit. And the cost would be at least $3 million plus to duplicate what we already have. We don't have a court system. We do have a community court in the valley because of the sheriff's department working with them. So that's provided. I feel the sheriff's department does an excellent job. And also, I wouldn't want to see why we'd have to have another layer of government where we already are getting an excellent service. And nationwide, the trend is working together, communities combining the resources, and that keeps costs down and helps the courts, again, pay for that and balance the budget. And I don't see a problem with that, what the sheriff's department is doing. I would continue to contract as it is.
All right.
Yeah, I also spoke with Ozzy last month as well about some of these issues. I support the current contract we have with the city to provide public safety. One of the challenges that they're really having is they cannot find police officers. There's a shortage nationwide, and getting a police officer to actually join our police force or the police force that we have contracted through is not an easy task. That is the challenge, that is the problem. We actually are willing to pay for more police officers, but we don't have them available to us. And so we're trying to work with that, and that's a challenge. And how we're going to solve that is going to take some consideration from the council.
Any follow-up from you?
No, it's
Stay on the subject of public safety and the sheriff as well. One thing you do not have in that contract is a dedicated mental health unit that serves strictly and exclusively the city of Spokane Valley. Would you opt for that and opt to pay additional to get it, Mr. Tucker?
As far as trying to figure out what allocate the funds for public safety above the contract of the city, I don't have enough background in the mental issue. I was told the statistic is about 2 in 10 homeless are mentally challenged as far as that goes. I think that anyone that we have in the city who needs to contribute to our city needs to have an opportunity to do that. And so as far as the mental health situation, I don't have a lot of input on that because I've not studied that yet, and I don't want to go into an area. I just don't know. I need more time to look at that. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Hattenberg?
I would look at adding that and also look at the cost again, because they're already spending money by transporting people downtown to facilities we don't have. So that cost, they're spending money doing that now in our contract to do so. So I don't know how much that would increase the cost if they had their own mental health specific task force, so to speak. But I would certainly explore that. I wouldn't look at, again, if we could do it within the budget, of course, would be the first option, and see what they're spending already in the contract by transportation of people to other facilities that we don't have.
All right. I've asked you a number of questions, and I don't see much difference between the two of you at this point. For the voters who are watching this program, let's put this question first to you and go through the process. Mr. Tucker, what do you disagree with Mr. Hattenberg on strongly?
Well, I will tell you why. When I was actually considering to be a city councilman, I looked at the ballot, and there was not a conservative person, a fiscally conservative person in that position that was running. And so I felt like a conservative member of society needed to be in that because I liked the way the Valley has been and like the way it would be. After the primary election, both of the opponents that I had actually did endorse Tim, which tells me that I was accurate in that statement. Tim is very conservative in his conversation with me. He is in alignment with the progressive things that are going on in Spokane, the city of Spokane, and I just feel like he doesn't match the values. He's had 2 elections, he's lost both of them, and I feel it's in alignment with the values of the Valley more than anything else. That's one of the reasons I did run. I like Tim, he's a great guy, but I just think the way that we would do government would be a little bit different, and that's why I'm running.
Mr. Hattenberg?
Well, I find it interesting, the definition of fiscal conservative. I've been a fiscal conservative my entire life. There was 8 children in our family, and that's the way we were raised. That's why we did so well. And I won't go into personal details of how well we all have all done. And that's the way I approach things. I'm not aligned with people in the city. I'm not saying, hey, you vote for me and we'll do this and that. I care about the valley. It's about the Spokane Valley. I do disagree with Bo on the fact that some of the people he's aligned with, I don't believe there's transparency in government. They're willing to go off and do their own things, set their agenda without enough public input. I hear that a lot at the door. That wouldn't happen under my watch. It's all about running the city. And people at your local level, politics are very, very important to people when you talk about the doorstep, and they feel they're not being heard. And I feel under my watch they would be heard.
All right. Which brings us to closing remarks, unless you have a follow-up to what he had to say. You were entitled to 30 seconds.
I actually agree with what he just said, especially about transparency, because I'm one of those that says, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to make sure that people know what I'm doing. I don't have anything behind a closed door.
All right.
So in my closing remarks, I'm looking for the vote at Spokane Valley because I believe that I will work very hard. I work extremely hard day to day with my family and raising 6 children. Like he said, he came from a family of 8. There's an economy that goes with that forces you to really consider what's important. I have tried very hard to be a good family man, to work with my family, to raise a good family, and I feel like I've done that. And I want other people who move to Spokane Valley, and I know that people do move to Spokane Valley specifically because of the environment that exists, and I want to maintain and continue that, and that is why I'm running for office.
All right. Mr. Hattenberg?
Yes, I just want to reiterate, living in the valley my entire life, I've seen so many changes and so much growth, and I want to be part of that growth. And it takes strong leadership and the ability and the willingness to listen to people. This is not a career move. I've tried to retire a few different times. It didn't work. I ended up with the library district, now hopefully with the city council. And I care about my community. I care about my neighbors. And I care about how we run things. And as far as public safety, I will listen to people. I enjoy working with people. And I love challenges. I love to learn also. And that's one thing I've learned when you run for office. There's some people that run for office, and Bo not being one of them, that they assume they know everything. And I think that's offensive to people. And that's being a former teacher. I had told my students, one student asked me one time, he goes, well, didn't you know everything? I go, no, I think that position's already filled by someone higher up. So that's my attitude toward that. And I'm willing to learn and listen to people. We're not always going to agree. That's just part of life. But when you sit down and have dialogue, you're more likely, you'll at least learn something, even if you go walk away in a cordial disagreement. And that's my view and how to run things, and that's how I will do so as a city council person.
Jim Hattenberg, Bo Tucker, thank you very much for your participation today, and good luck to both of you in the upcoming election. That's the program for the 6th position number 6 in the Spokane Valley municipal election. I'm Mike Fitzsimmons, and we thank you for watching.